this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is my Copper Beech, which I'm now going to repot. I bought this last year, where? Blackmore Vale show from Colette, that was once Southampton Trees, I don't know what it's called now. And Copper Beech, it had had some basic pruning done on it that year, and Colette said that she, as far as she could remember, because I asked when it was last repotted, she said, as far as I remember, I repotted everything, but I can't remember specifically. But at the end of the day, I don't like what it's in, and what it's in has managed to grow that lot, you know, so I want it gone. I think it's got a wire holding it in. Yes, it's in a training pot, so we'll get it in a proper bonsai pot. I always do my repotting videos in two parts. We get the thing out and play with the roots, that's sort of section one, and then I have a clear up and mix up some bonsai soil. I don't show that, there's no point, I'll just say what's in it. And then basically I'll go out in the shed where all my bonsai pots are and select a suitable pot, and then I'll return to the video once I've got my media and my pot, and we'll get it in its new pot. But first job is to get it out of its old pot and see what sort of it's been raining, everything's soaking wet. It rained practically all day yesterday. Now this is just the buds are moving. I've left it a little bit late, but they haven't actually opened yet. We can't see the leaves yet, but this ought to have been done a week ago really, but I've been busy doing other things. Right, so basically we just, as I get my tools out of the way, we'll start with the root hook and see if this was repotted around this time last year, then this should all come off quite easily. And we'll see what we're working with. Well, it's got some roots, that's good. That's the trouble with bonsai, you know, if you buy them in a pot, you bring them home, you haven't really got a clue what's in that pot. You get it from a reputable bonsai dealer, I suppose you can at least believe that it's probably in some decent media and not spade full of garden dirt or something. It's going to be in something reasonable. That doesn't mean to say it's in something that you like. Everybody keeps their bonsai in different places, and this is something that some people just don't appreciate. If you're a person that attends your bonsai constantly, you know, you're working with your bonsai most days, and you're around your bonsai a lot of the time, then you can throw your bonsai in pure akadama and the roots will do very well and your tree will do very well because you're there to attend it. Therefore you can water it every day and sometimes twice a day when it's warm weather and the sun's on your trees and your pot. I can't do that. Well, I could, but I can't be bothered, so I don't. So my mix is more water retentive, one of those words. So the sort of mix I use, others would say, oh, that's going to hold far too much water in the winter. It's a happy balance. That's the other thing. Some people shelter their trees in the winter. They have a cold greenhouse or something where they can put their trees under cover. I don't. Mine stay out, so if they get rained on all winter, they get rained on. If the temperatures go down below freezing, they get frozen. And they either put up with it or they don't. So I'm a bit brutal with my bonsai. I only water when we get dry periods, which is fair enough. But like yesterday, it rained for half the day. You can see this is soaking wet. This wouldn't need, you know, under normal circumstances, this wouldn't need watering now for at least a day or even 2 days. And in those 2 days, we might get some more rain. So, you know, I sort of think, what's the weather been doing? We haven't had any rain for a while, have we? I think I'll put the hose round. But before I put the hose round, I always go round and pick a few pots up and sort of go, yeah, it's actually quite heavy, that's still quite wet, and so they get left. Try not to let them totally dry out and frazzle. That's not good for them. Right, let's get this moss off of the trunk. My little brass wire toothbrush that I've recently got that does this job very, very well. It's a bit of a pain because it does get tangled up in the, you know, in the sort of brush part. But, you know, something like a pair of scissors you can hook between the little bundles and it comes off quite easy. I'm going to make this decision. Do I keep that silly root? Let's have a good look and see what's on the end of it. You know, if it's half the root system, then it will need to stay. It has actually got a fair bit of root on the end. I just don't like it. No, I'm going to take it off. I'll do that in a minute because I haven't got my, I didn't bring any pruning tools because I had no plans to prune this today. Well, I don't think there's much point in taking too much more off. I do want to get these out because I will reuse these. I don't see any point in creating new ones when there's ones here that are perfectly okay. There should be too. There's a second one somewhere. Oh, there it is. Let me just do a trim. Get this mud off. It's like a solid mass on the bottom, which I don't want. And we'll get back to the places where the new roots will shoot out. Got this time of year is, I still think is the best time to repot. Timing it to perfection is preferable rather than leaving it a week late, but it will be okay. But basically you're looking at on deciduous trees, all that energy is recouped in the autumn. All the chlorophyll and everything is retracted back in to the plant and sent down to the base of the plant to store away for the winter time when there's no activity and the tree's dormant, and then come the longer days and the better temperatures and the tree comes back to life, all that stored energy and all those resources push up into the tree and do this. And once they've actually done that, I think I might have knocked that bud, once they've done that, there's not much left down here, there's not much going on at all, and there's a bit of a lull in the ability for the tree, you know, to get resources from the base. It's not being able to photosynthesize because the leaves haven't opened yet, and all the energy is pushing those leaves out, ready to generate energy. So you get a bit of a lull, and that's not a bad time to repot. And then as the leaves open, you get the photosynthesis starts going again, so you get energy in the top of the tree, back down, then you get a surge of roots. So if those surge of roots go into the new media, all well and good. That's not a bad root system, I've seen worse. A horrible big chunky stick there. You can see why it was actually planted quite low in the pot. This is horrible. I don't think I'm going to be able to see. If I take it off, I've lost half the root system, so I'm stuck with it. So I might have to put the tree at a slight angle so that can be sat on the surface, I hope. Don't really want to bury it. Yeah, it was probably grown in the ground, it was probably field grown. But that's the worst of the old media out, without destroying the root system. And some people wash their roots, you know, they get the hose on them and wash out all the old media and everything. I don't bother. As I said, I'm not a finicky bonsai person. They're trees in pots, and they always seem to do pretty well. I've only lost a couple in the history of my bonsai world, but we've got rid of all the weeds, that's good. And I can now see the size of the root system, the size of the tree, and I will get a pot literally to the size of these roots so that it will go in a relatively small pot, which I will go and sort out now. So I'll have a clear up and get some media sorted, sort out what pot I'm going to use, get all the gubbins that I need to actually do the potting up part of this, and I'll be back. Right, I'm back. I've sorted out a pot. Always the way when you go and have a look at the pots you've got some that are a little bit too small and some that are quite a bit too big. Well, rather than a bit too big, I've gone for slightly on the small side, more in keeping with the bonsai look, I suppose. My media that I've got, there was a bit left over from last year, which I thought we'll start with that. And then I've added some multi-purpose compost, just the sort of thing you get to pot up your bedding plants. I had some leftover pretend akadama, so it was baked clay particles, but not the true thing. I don't buy akadama, it's too expensive for what it is. There are substitutes, but I wanted to use that up because it's not going to get used otherwise. This is the only repot I'm going to do this year. So I chuck that in, and that's baked clay, hard baked clay. I put a lot of grit in there, and there is a little bit of John Innes number 2, so a bit of body and some food for a while as well from the John Innes, and the multi-purpose. So it's very dry, it will need a good water, and then it will probably need another good water tomorrow because it's very dry. I found an old piece of wire that's been used before. I always reuse big pieces of wire, and I possibly do something different to what a lot of people might do with a pot like this. It's different. If you've got 4 holes, which you get in some of the better quality pots, or even 6 on perhaps the larger ones, then you would do this differently. But what I do is I put a piece of wire underneath the pot, then put these little bits on top and let the media hold them in place. You can make the little butterfly clips if you like, but once the media is on top of this, it's not going to move. You know, it will stay in place. So that's what I do. I get them in place like that, and then the first thing I do is put some media on top like that. Some people put a drainage layer in, you know, like a layer of grit or very small pebbles or something like that. This is a small pot and it's got a lot of grit and the baked clay, so it's the water's going to run straight through this. So I don't need to worry too much about a drainage layer. Now, if I'd chosen to use a pot that was a bit too big, then I would suggest a drainage layer might have been a good idea. Right, and it's traditional to have a mound in the middle, although that's only useful if you've got an area for that mound to go in. Now I'm going to just go and get my cutters. Right, always forget something, don't you? This long root here has got hardly anything hanging off of it, so I'm actually going to take it off because it is the highest root. That then allows me to go farther down into the pot. And I'm going to take that silly little root off there as well, because I just don't like it. Some people like those sort of things, but I don't. So we'll clip it off. So an amount of root come off with that, but not the end of the world. And then we'll just trim that back to the trunk like that. Just trim that a bit better so that it calluses over a bit flatter. I have got a one of those cutters that digs in a bit, but that will callus over okay, as will that. I'm not going to take any off that side. So all the rest of these roots should go in okay. Let's just check that we haven't got any woody ones that are going to stop it going in before we start. Yep, that'll go in okay. But before I bury that, as I say, I always forget stuff. Luckily my stuff's just in there. It'd be nice to have like a workshop where you could do all of your work, but I haven't got enough trees to warrant that, where everything is just there at your fingertips. But just wanted to put some cut paste on that, as it's right down near the base and will get wet. And where was the other one? We just will do that while we're at it. I did get some different type of cut paste from somewhere in England, doesn't matter where, and it was hopeless. It was like children's putty. It didn't stick to anything. I mean, this is brilliant, this stuff. There's a big list of what's in it there, so you can see that it's really good stuff. Where's my lens? Pointing at the sky here. So you can read that, obviously. It's got some really good things in it, you know, and what it's called and everything is nice and clear. It's really good stuff. The only thing that's clear on here is made in Japan. That's in English, but it is good stuff. And then you get some on your finger, of course, which you need to get off reasonably quickly or it'll stick like anything. So now, how far can we get down in the pot? Just these long roots I'm just sort of spreading out a bit so they've got their own space. Something like that. So we are over at a slight angle. We'll have to live with that, so we will have a slight curve. But there's very little movement in this trunk, quite honestly. It's a informal upright, it'll be called. Well, that's what I'm calling it anyway. Right, so we'll get some media in. I giggle sometimes at people that have bought things for their bonsai because they think they ought to. And you see people playing with the little shovel, little scoop thing. You've got hands. But the one thing I do agree with, if I can find it, is the dreaded chopstick. That I do agree with. That really does get the stuff down in between the roots. Now I'm not filling this up to the top at the moment. All I'm doing is getting the tree where I want it and enough media to hold it where I want it prior to twirling that wire around. But if you don't do this and you wire it, then you do this, you'll often find when you finish poking all your media down, the tree's loose and you've got to do your wire up tighter. I always find it pays to do it. First of all, so that there are no gaps. You've filled all the gaps in. I mean, where I'm poking this now, the media is dropping down quite a bit. Watering helps fill it in, the gaps as well. I mean, that takes place as you water each time it settles. Yeah, see that stumpy bit of root is sticking up there, but I will just about get enough media on there to cover that. And then we've got to try and get this to grab hold. we go. Oh, we go. Can only go one side or the other, and I think there were more roots this side, so we'll go this side. I always go off to one side where I form my twist, and then that can get buried. All I do is a couple of twists like that by hand. And did I bring my big pliers? Yes, I did. I remembered that. And I remembered my wire cutters. But when you're only going to do one repot in a year, you know, it's not necessarily readily at hand, is it? And then we'll use the pliers to twist so that we get a good hold here. How are we doing here? Yeah, that's got it. You don't need to squeeze the life out of your roots, just enough to hold the tree in place, and the test is always pick the tree up by the trunk, and if it pulls out then you did it wrong. Just cut that lot off, we don't need all that, we only need a couple of twists to keep it in place, and then we can push that down. And then hopefully that will disappear as we get the rest of the media in. Right. See what we're doing here. Right. Let's see how far that goes down then. I think that's enough. And then what I always do is go around the edge of the pot with my big heavy-handed thumbs. Get that firmly in place. Then we have a look round, see what roots are sticking up, and go down with my root pruning shears just below the ground level where they stick up. Can't do that, that's that stumpy bit of wood. Can't do anything about that, I have to live with that. Maybe when the tree has grown an awful lot more roots in other places, that stumpy bit can come off, because it has got quite a few roots attached to it. Right, I'm happy with that. The only thing I will do now is we'll give it a layer of grit. Just top dress basically. It makes it look prettier, and I was going to say it helps stop the weeds and the moss, but the weeds and the moss still manage to grow. Doesn't stop them. I think it just sort of helps, and it just makes it look more uniform rather than loads of different colours. And this is coming to the end of the bag, so there's an awful lot of dust here. That will wash down in when I water it. The end of that. I do have more grit, I have a giant bag, but I do have a problem. When I went to get it, I twisted my back loading it in the car, 2 bags, decorative and functional, and those bags are both in the carport, and I'm reluctant to lift them and bring them round the back here, because I've got to carry them right round, you know, from the front of the house to the back of the house, and I'm waiting for my son to appear on one of his rare visits when he will pick one up under each arm and carry them around. Whereas if I do them, I'm liable to injure my back, so I'm going to leave it. Right, so that's that one done. and that's my only repot. Now, I don't put labels in bonsai pots. I've got my notes, and as some of you may have noticed, I haven't got enough trees to warrant labels in the pots. I can see what they are. There's not enough to worry about. And my bonsai collection is geared up to trees that are heading towards maturity. They might not be there yet. Some are close and some are quite a way off, but I don't plan on getting many more trees, if any, because of how I'm going to do the garden. As you've all seen, the channel is Roger's Garden and Bonsai, and there is a reason for that. I see my trees as part of my garden, yeah, and I'm about to make some individual plant stands. They'll consist of like a square base, plywood base, a post, and then an oblong platform to put the pots on. And I'm hoping to have 4 or 5 of those dotted around the garden so that trees can be displayed individually and have their own space. They can be moved around as a consequence. So at the moment I've got some quite large staging that I have another use for, to do with my orchids, and so I'm hoping to get those individual plant stands fixed up relatively soon. I've got the timber, and I'm hoping to get access to a woodworking workshop, you know, with a proper bench saw and you know, circular saw, all that sort of stuff, because cutting sheets of plywood with a handsaw, it's really a no-no, isn't it, especially if you've got a bad back. So I'm hoping to get that done quite soon. Then my more mature trees that warrant an individual stand can be placed on there, and the slatted staging that I've got that's quite clumsy looking will be used for something else, and that'll be over here on the patio out of the garden basically. So well, that certainly looks better than it did before, and as I said, I'm just going to let this grow this year, get a decent leaf cover on it, and that'll generate a nice set of new roots down here once these leaves open up and the photosynthesis takes place. And then next year I might think about doing some pruning. Most of it will probably be trimming back. Beech are not that easy to generate very fine ramification because of the way they grow. They put all their energy into the end tips. Now you can take those off, but they also tend to have side branches that flick upwards. Well, yes, you can wire them down and try and get flat platforms, but if you look at beech trees in the wild, they don't grow like that. They don't have flat platforms. They actually do tend to turn upwards. And the overall shape is similar to many trees, but how it's constructed inside is based with branches mostly growing upwards with their leaves opening out sideways. So we'll see how it grows. Anyway, this will be its first year with me starting from scratch, because it was bought mid-season last year, so it was already in full leaf, and as I said, had been pre-trimmed by somebody else. Got quite a few wire scars in places. They'll never grow out, deciduous tree, but hopefully eventually the leaf cover will disguise that, if not hide it completely. So there we go, bonsai repot, Copper Beech, about to come into leaf. And person I bought it from, Colette, she said you get the best colour if it gets full sun all day long. Another reason for having a relatively water retentive media, so that I don't have to run out 2 or 3 times a day if we get another heat wave. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.